Hello my friends, and a very warm welcome back to my painting channel. And in this video I'm going to be painting a 3D printed model that a friend of mine gave to me very recently. This is Raziel. Raziel is a former vampire hunter turned vampire turned into a soul reaver. So if you're used to the soul reaver games and the Legacy of Kain games, you'll know a little bit about Raziel. If not, it's very complicated and probably too much information to give you right now at the beginning. But what we're going to do is we're going to start by painting all of Raziel's skin, and we're going to start by using the dark Prussian blue color from Vallejo. This is a really nice dark blue tone, and this is going to be a very good base color for us to start using on all of this skin. This is going to be a really good base tone that we can then darken down a little bit and start to build a lot of vibrancy up from. Now, although this is a 3D printed model, a friend of mine does have a very good 3D printer, but also he has a very good knack for being able to calibrate and customize the 3D print, so we get quite a lot of detail out of our little prints. So this model does have a lot of detail, especially around things like the legs and the arms, and all around the sort of stomach area, where you can see all of the muscle tone and definition and things like that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cover all of the skin in this really nice dark blue color, as you can see. And then we're going to build this back up a little bit later. Now I'm going to put two thin layers of paint on this particular model, and we're going to build this up along with a few other tones and colors as we go. The good thing with the basing stage like this is you don't have to be too careful, because if you do make any mistakes at the very beginning, it is very easy to repair. From there then, once that is dry, I'm going to use a Vallejo flat earth color, and this flat earth tone we're going to use just across the sort of shawl that he's got draped around his face and around his shoulders, and we're just going to paint this just gently, and just be a little bit careful now not to get this on the blue that we've already painted. Again, because these are all just base layers at the moment, it doesn't matter too much if you make any mistakes, because it is easy to repair. But in the long run, if you do try to take your time and not make too much of a mess of things, it does make painting that little bit quicker and that little bit easier. So as you can see, I'm just going to paint across all these little bandages and things, just going across his arms as well, and again just around the back area of this sort of cloth that's covering all around his shoulders. From there, I'm going to use a completely different paint on this one, and I'm going to use a burnt tin color. This one's an AK interactive color, and this is a very dark tin metallic color. Now, the reason why I'm using this color is because it is completely different and new to the channel. It's something that I've never used before. But also, these little greaves just around Raziel's feet and ankles are metallic, but they are very dark. Now, looking at a lot of the original artwork, there is quite a few different ways or a few different tones or colors that these tend to be. So I wanted to paint these really dark and make them look worn out and beaten, and sort of just a very sort of tarnished kind of metallic color. So this is why we're using this. From there then, I'm going to use just plain old black, and with plain old black we're just going to paint this just across Raziel's hair, being careful not to get this paint, the black, on the little blue parts that I've painted his ears. So there are two little blue ears in here as well, so just being very careful not to get this now on the blue that we've already painted. And you can already start to see the colors are starting to bring the character to life. So we're starting to see the character that we know and love from the video games in just a few simple, quick and easy stages, just like so. Again, try to be careful not to get this on any of the other areas. And once that's done, then we're going to use a dark blue grey. And the dark blue grey is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a very sort of darkish grey, but it does have a slight blue colour to it, which makes this a really good colour to base coat things like rocks. Because that little blue sort of tone to it will create a little bit of a cooler or colder temperature. This makes painting rocks very cool, or very good, because it does give off that illusion or that sort of feeling that the rocks themselves are a little cold or a little bit cool, and the sort of colour textures and the colour tones do add together to that. Once that bit is dry, we're going to then use a bone white colour. So this is the nice cream colour from Vallejo, and that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a very quick and simple plan for the symbol that Raziel has across his sort of shawl here. He has this shawl going across his shoulders, as I say, and we're just going to try to quickly freehand the shape of the symbol. So Raziel's symbol himself is kind of like a little bit of a love heart in some ways, but kind of not. So just trying to add these little bits together, and then of course I'm going to paint that bone white just across the claws here on his hands. You can also add them on the sort of claw parts to his feet as well, and again different kinds of artwork. Sometimes he has blue feet, sometimes he has sort of bone parts to his feet, so again that's personal choice as to which side you would prefer to go, and which sort of colour you would prefer to paint the feet. As you can see, I'm just spending a little bit of time, just a little bit of guesswork as to how I want this sort of texture to look around the freehand. And once that is dry, we're then going to use flat brown just across the dirt and earth here. Now, I'm using flat brown, which is a little bit of a reddy colour, and the reason why I'm using this little bit of a red colour is because I wanted the earth and the mud just around the base to have a little bit more warmth to it than the rocks. So the idea behind this is creating this So the whole idea is to create this sort of cool sort of colder colour on the rocks, and then a nice sort of lighter sort of brown colour, and a bit more warmth to the earth there as well. Now once that's done, I'm then just going to use a black wash. For this one I'm just using a Vallejo black wash for this particular model. It's a different wash to what I've used previously in other videos, and it is exactly what it says on the tin. It's pretty much just a nice black wash. So you could use any kind of black wash if you're following along and painting along with me. Something like Null Oil would be perfect. This one is just going to tone down the colours just a little bit more than I would like, but that doesn't matter because we're going to build all of those colours back up as we go anyway. So starting with the skin, once all of that is dry, we're going to use the dark Prussian blue and a nice amount of medium blue. So we're going to mix half and half. So this is just one blob of each, 50% of each paint, and then we're going to use our size 0 brush. So this is our nice detailed brush, and as I said, this model has quite a lot of different details and quite a lot of different textures to the model and things like that. So what we're going to do is, using the very tip of this size 0 brush, we're just going to slowly start to pick a lot of those details out. And the cool thing is, by using that black wash, it has toned down a lot of the colour on the blue really nicely. So this means as we start to build this blue back up, we're going to really start to build the vibrance and the contrast really nicely. So by the time we start reaching the 4th or the 5th layer, the highlighting and the contrast between the lighter skin color and the skin tones versus the darker patches are really going to make this model stand out and really make it pop as well. So as you can see, I'm just trying to be careful not to paint into the recessed areas, and then I'm using the tip of the brush just to create a little bit of character and paint how I think certain bits might look if there's bits missing. And I'm just building this through in a nice, quick and simple, easy pattern, just like so. Just trying to pick out the rib cage and the muscle texture just across the legs and the knees, and I'm also doing the same thing just across these little wings, or what is left of his wings, just across the back here as well. Again, if you've seen the games or played the games, or if you're a fan of the Soul Reaver series, then you'll know all about these poor shredded wings. Now from there, we're going to then just use the medium blue on its own, and we're going to do the same thing as what we've just done. The only thing we're going to do this time is we're going to be a little bit more specific or precise as to where we're going to place this paint. So as you can see, I'm just going to paint this again just across all of these little muscle tones and textures and all these little bits that are sticking out, and all around the waist, sort of the muscle definition just across the stomach area here as well, and of course the rib cage, the muscles on the arms, all of these bits. I'm being a little bit more specific about where I place it, because we're not going to place this on the underneath of the model. We're going to place the paint just on the areas of the miniature that are facing up a little bit more. So this is giving us the illusion that light is catching sort of on the top half of the legs, but then we do have shadows and things just across the bottom half of the legs. And this is where I was talking to you earlier about contrast. So the more that we choose where we're controlling where this light source is coming from, this is going to create a really cool element of contrast, and again make this model really pop and stand out in your display cabinet or on the board if you're using him as a proxy for any kind of game that you might be playing. So like I normally do, I'm just showing you sort of an extended version of me painting, just to give you guys an idea as to how I paint and the brush strokes and the things that we do and the things that I tend to do in terms of my painting and the sketching kind of effect and things that I do. It's always nice to have sort of a longer sort of way of showing you how to paint. It's my kind of style of doing these videos. It's always nice for you guys to have a little bit more info and seeing sort of how the paint applies to the miniature and how it dries down and things like that. It's all part of the process. Now once that is dry, then we're going to use the medium blue and an Andrea blue, and again I'm using 50-50, so just one blob of each paint, so this is just half and half. And again, I'm just going to be very, very specific, this time being a little bit more careful as to where I place this. And I'm also using a very small stippling motion as well, so just dabbing the very tip of the brush onto some of these muscle points and some of these textures. And this is creating the illusion of extra texture as well. That was a little bit more difficult to say than I was expecting. But yes, this is giving us a little bit more texture in our miniature and a little bit more texture in the painting as well. This is the type of thing that is going to bring the model to life and really make it stand out. These little textures and tones and these little highlights and these little vibrant patches and areas are really what's going to make this its own. It's really going to stand out and it's really going to have this amazing, amazing character with the contrast that we're giving it. Again, you can see I'm painting just around the legs, and I'm also giving just around his sort of eyebrow areas and the forehead a little bit of detail and a little bit of attention as well. And again, that's creating this character, this illusion of sort of shadow and highlight and all these different things. And it's cool because that's all we're doing is slowly building up a nice vibrant blue tone, and bit by bit and stage by stage this blue tone is really starting to stand out. It's really starting to make him look like the Soul Reaver. You know, Raziel is sort of coming to life in our hands, and this is really, really cool. Again, just painting down these poor little wings, just picking out all of those bits that I want highlights to be on. And once that is dry, we're going to use Andrea blue just on its own. So just like we did earlier with the medium blue, and this time we're just going to be a little bit more careful as to where we place it. So we're not placing this over the whole model or anything like that. We're just picking out those areas that we want to have the highlights. So we're just picking out some of those bits that we want the highlighted areas to really sort of pop and grow, again for that contrast. I know I keep drumming on about this contrast and all these different things, but this is what's important in certain models and certain ways of painting, because as we build this, it's really going to show through. And again, just showing you on these wings, just picking out some of those raised points. And again, the beauty of having this watered down paint, so just using a little bit of water with your paints as well goes a long way, because it does allow the paint to move and manipulate onto your miniatures in such a nice even way, and it dries down in a really lovely way. And again, just picking out all of those little bits of muscle, a little bit now just across the front of those ribs, just like so. Maybe a little bit too much there, just got a little bit into the creases, so we're just going to use a slightly wet brush just to remove the excess from in those little creases. And then we're going to paint up, again just being very specific about where we place it, all around those legs. Just like so, and you can really see this little sketchy sort of effect, this little dabbing with the tip of the brush. You can really see this starting to create the texture and the illusion of this really cool looking miniature. Now from there, as an option, I'm also going to use Hyrule blue, Hyrule blue, something like that. So I'm going to use Hyrule blue, and this is just an optional extra. So if you don't have scale 75, or if you don't want to do this particular layer, you don't have to, but this optional extra is purely just about a crazy level of highlight. So this is just about adding just that extra layer of really sort of bright color, just to kind of get that color, that blue, to really pop and really make Raziel look almost ethereal in some ways. He's going to have this sort of property of a creature where the light is really sort of having this spectral ethereal kind of quality to it as well. So by having this really nice vibrant light blue, and again thinned down with a little bit of water, so we get this kind of glazing effect, as you can see, and this will dry lovely into the model and into the miniature and create this really cool effect. I'm spending so much time describing and talking about the skin because, as I normally say, when you're painting models, it's always worth spending a lot more time painting the larger areas and the parts that people will notice the most. And because this model is mostly skin, it's worth spending that extra amount of time just making the skin look just that little bit more fantastic, because that's the part that everyone's going to notice. And once all of that is dry, we're then going to move on to painting the shawl just around his shoulders and around his neck. So we're going back to that flat earth color, and I'm just building this back up. And what I'm doing this time now is, again, using the tip of the brush, I'm going to manipulate the paint around, but I'm going to try to leave the areas in the creases where the shade and the wash has dried down, and we're going to try to leave that a little bit darker, and we're going to try to paint this just up on the raised area so that we get this really cool, amazing sort of texture and tone between sort of the darker area below and the lighter area on top. It doesn't matter too much if we paint over the pattern and things that we did earlier, because earlier when we did the pattern, it was all just about checking and testing to see where it was going to go and how it was going to look and things like that. So it doesn't matter too much if you go over that a little bit. And as you can see, I'm just doing a little bit of dry brushing as well, just across these little bits of sort of cloth around his hands. So just doing a little bit of dry brushing just around here, using a detailed dry brush. So this is one of my smaller dry brushes, so I'm not going to use my actual size 0 painting brush. It's always good to do dry brushing with a separate brush that you paint with, because dry brushing will ruin your paints otherwise. So it's always good to have dry brushes specifically for the job and a paintbrush specifically for the job as well. Each brush has its own unique properties, and it has its own unique uses when you're painting. So once that is done, we are then going to go back to using our flat earth, and we're going to combine that with a small amount of brown sand. So this one I'm going to paint half and half. So again, this is just one blob of each, and then I'm going to start to do like we've done previously with the skin. I'm just going to start to pick out some of those raised points. So as you can see, all of those folds and all of those creases, we're going to start to build all of those back up using the very edge of our brush again. And again, using our size 0, our nice detailed brush, we're just going to build this up nice and evenly. And again, by using a small amount of water with this is really going to allow this tone and texture to sort of blend together and create these nice highlights. But these are going to be really nice, smooth tone, smooth textured highlights that are really going to look the part. And you can see now, just going around the face, doesn't matter too much, like I said, about that not the texture, but the symbol that we painted, because we're going to build that back up again anyway. So it doesn't matter too much if you paint over that or anything along those lines. Don't worry too much, because we're going to fix that as we go. Just doing the little bit of dry brushing again, just across those little wraps, those little hand wraps that he has. And then from there, then we're going to go back to the bone white, and using the bone white, now we're going to start to plan where our symbol actually is. So as you can see, just starting by painting down the face. So we're going to go with just a line down the face, and then we're going to build this kind of almost love heart kind of feel just around those folds, just like so. And you can really see this symbol starting to take shape, and it creates so much character and depth to the model just by doing a very small amount of freehand. Again, you don't have to be perfect with this. This is something that we are going to tie together and blend together in a really nice and simple fashion. It's really going to make all of the color and all of the model's tones and colors really come together in just a second. So don't worry too much. You don't got to be perfect. It doesn't have to look exactly the same as the video game, because as we sort of compile these colors together, it's going to look really nice. So just take your time and build it up and have fun with this. And once that bit is done, we're then also going to paint just around the nails and just around his claws, like so. And as a natural highlight to the bone white, we're going to go with one of my favorites, which is the elfic flesh. This is a very vibrant cream color, so this is a really good color to use as a nice natural highlight. And I'm just going to use this just in some of the very edges. So as you can see, areas where the symbol is just sitting on top of those creases and folds, I'm just going to use the elfic flesh just to boost that highlight and vibrancy in the lighter areas. And then I'm also just going to paint a little bit across the top half of the nails, creating a lighter area across the top half of the nails and leaving the underneath of the nails a little bit darker. I'm then going to use German grey, and German grey then again I'm just going to be very careful using a small dry brush, and I'm going to gently dry brush this just across Raziel's hair. Raziel's hair is also very dark. It's kind of like a blue, which is why I'm using the German grey, because this is giving us a really cool sort of blue tone in the hair. Now, as we're talking about blue tones in grey, I'm also then going to use the blue-grey pale, and I'm going to dry brush this just across the rocks, just like so. And this is going to keep and maintain that really cool sort of colour and that cool sort of tone that we were talking about out of those rocks. Once that's dry, I'm also going to use a small amount of sky grey. This is a much lighter colour, so I'm going to be very careful, and I'm just going to dry brush this across only sort of the top area of the rocks. Again, this is creating a little bit more of an illusion of highlight across the top area, while the bottom area then stays and maintains a little bit darker. And that's giving us, again, a little bit of contrast, but in a very quick and easy, simplistic way. Just going to be careful not to get that across his feet. Once that's done, then we're going to use flat brown, and I'm going to dry brush this just across that muddy area and the dirt and the earth, just creating that nice red warm colour. So that gives us the cool little contrast, I guess, or that cool little difference between the sort of cool blue tone of the rocks and the light sort of reddy colour of the earth. And then once we're done with that, we're going to use mahogany brown, and this is also a nice light red colour, and this tone is going to stand out and make a nice highlight dry brush to that dirt and that earth. This again is going to create that little bit more warmth and that little bit more colour and texture to the dirt and to the base. And again, that's giving us a really cool look between the sort of cool colours of the rocks and the lighter colours of the dirt. From there then, I'm going to use a small and thin layer of soft tone. So as I said, just across the shawl. This is going to cover over the cream and the brown. And this one now is a nice, very light brown tone. So this soft tone is very, very light. It doesn't matter too much if we paint this over the top of what we've already painted, because we're not going to lose any of that detail or texture. And it's going to tie that cream into that brown in a really, really, really stunning way. And it's so, so simple. Once that's done, I'm then just going to use black, and I'm going to paint just around all of the base using this nice black colour, and this is going to dry down in a nice matte fashion, so this is really going to tie everything together and make the model look complete and finished. And then one more part, I'm just going to add a small sort of kind of like, I don't know, like a dead kind of bush just to the bottom, a little grass tuft just here, and it's going to be a dark, dark brown sort of broken one. And all in all, that is Raziel, all painted and complete. I'd like to take a moment just for a second just to say thank you again, as always, my friends, for everything you do, your support, your comments, the sharing, everything. I really do appreciate everything that you do, and all of the contributions and everything you contribute to the channel, whether it be through questioning me and pushing me to paint better, or whether it's by offering advice in the comment section for others as well. This is becoming a fantastic hobby place as well. I'd also like to take just a quick moment to put a shout out to Edward, who's been watching the channel and enjoying painting up his first ever batch of Space Marines, and I really do love a few of the ideas that you have as well, my friend, and I wish you all the best in painting your salamanders as well. So thank you all, my friends. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see all of you on the next one. Take care.